Good morning, I'm Maria from the Rich and Simple Living. Today we're doing a trip. I recently visited some places, and one of them was Haddon Hall in the Peak District in Derbyshire. So I thought today I'll show you what I've filmed. But I've jotted down a little bit of information because I'm trying to look at them from an educational point of view as well as an enjoyable point of view. So I just jotted a few little bits of information down about Haddon Hall. Like I said, it's in Derbyshire in the Peak District. The origins of the hall date back to the early 11th century when William the Conqueror's illegitimate son, William Peveril, held the manor of Haddon in 1087. So over 900 years old. It's one of the oldest houses in England and also one of the only houses in England to have remained in the same family. It was, I think, belonged to the Vernon family, and then it switched, the surname switched to Manners, as I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. There was a time period where it remained empty. The family had moved out and gone to live in one of their other castles, halls, and it remained empty for a little while, nearly 200 years. They locked the door, that was it, didn't move anything, everything stayed in situ. The house was kept at night and it wasn't left to go to disrepair. Can't get my words out today. So it was still in good state, and nearly 200 years later they decided to come back, and the house must have been a bit like a time capsule walking in, and it's got no Victorian things, no Georgian things. It was sort of all prior to that, and medieval and Tudor, very Tudor. So yeah, and they opened it back up. Furniture remained where it was. The banqueting hall, the table was still there, and the chalices that they drank out of was still in the big cupboards, and everything was just like they'd left it. You know, like it's a bit like nobody had gone nowhere, but time had just stood still. So that must have been quite something to see, as it is now when you go in. But I mean, it's surrounded by lots of modern people coming and going now. But yeah, it's very Tudor. That's all I can say about it. It boasts a 110-foot gallery, which is more Elizabethan fashion, and that's up the stairs. And it is said to be one of the most beautiful rooms in England. It's quite good. It had movies, actually. Yeah, I'll tell you about the movies. It's had some movies filmed there, as most big places do. Haddon Hall was the backdrop for various versions of Jane Eyre, The Princess Bride, I'm not sure what that is, I've not seen that, Elizabeth, Pride and Prejudice, and The Other Boleyn Girl. So it's had a few movies filmed there. If you're interested in it from an educational point of view, then it's very good for art, design and history. As you'd see when I show you the videos, if you can tell very well. I mean, the design of the house is brilliant and the art in it is fantastic. The parlour is still the same. It's all Tudor, and it's got the painted scenes with the Tudor rose. It's fascinating to see. I will show you in a minute, you'll see it in a minute. Pictures might not be brilliant because it's windows everywhere and light comes in, and there's no angle you can get where you're not going to get beams of light somewhere. So we'll see it the best we can anyway. So yeah, like I say, educational wise, art, design and history it's good for to go and visit. They do children's tours in there, which is good educationally, to tell them some of the history of the hall, and they do let adults tag on. They say to keep a distance from your children, but the lady let us all tag on, and she was even letting other people who hadn't got children just stand and listen. The lady asked, can I listen? And she was quite happy to let her, yeah. So she took us in the kitchens and told us a story about a little boy, 5 years old. His name was Martin, and he went to work there. He was working there at 5 years old. I mean, can you imagine your child going to work at 5 years old? I mean, mine's 12 and I pretty much mollycoddle her. But 5 years old. His name was Martin. His job was to turn the big spits, and he slept there. He slept in the kitchen, just on like reeds on the floor, and that was his life. That's what he did. Couldn't imagine. I mean, you'd have all kinds of people after you today if you were to do something like that. But 5 years old, just a baby really, you know, that's not very old. Then upstairs they were telling the children in the long gallery about the daughters of the house at this point. I think the father was a George Vernon, and they got 2 daughters. Dorothy was the heiress, and then the other daughter Margaret, and they were finding suitable gentlemen for them to marry, you know, because they like to marry well and inherit lots of land and estates, that sort of thing. So they'd married the younger, I think she was the younger daughter, must have been, if Dorothy was the heiress. So they'd married Margaret, she'd got a nice husband and everything, and they'd been trying to find suitors for the older daughter Dorothy, and she didn't like any of them. She'd fallen in love with this other man that hadn't got so much, John Manners, I think his name was, and the family wasn't as wealthy like the Vernons were, so her dad didn't feel he was a suitable suitor. So I'm just going to move position. So yeah, the daughter got married, and they had the ball. Had a wedding reception and the ball. It's all right, I'm just plugging you into my electric because my battery's going. Yeah, so they got married. They had this nice big ball and everything, and in the long gallery upstairs, and they were all dancing, everything. And Dorothy was there at her sister's wedding, but she was dancing, and apparently during that time, she managed, when everybody was all preoccupied, to sneak out the door. She ran through the gardens and down to a little bridge where this John Manners was waiting with a horse, and they rode off, I think, into Leicestershire, and got married in Leicestershire, I think she said. And yeah, got married. So apparently it turned out okay. He must have come good in the end, because the father obviously forgave them, and he did pass the estate on to his daughter Dorothy, which is how it came into the Manners name. So that's some of the stories she was telling us anyway. I know I should say visit the place and find out, but if you're not local to it and you can't visit the place, then I'll tell you these stories anyway. So yeah, she was a little bit rusty, and we couldn't go in the chapel either. The chapel was closed, which is a shame, because apparently it's got some beautiful artwork and that in there, but we couldn't go in, so maybe another time. It is a very interesting place. The only thing I would say is, if you've got physical disabilities that affect your movement and everything, it might not be so good, because there's a lot of steps. The surfaces are very uneven. Even with good legs, you struggle a bit, people trip. It was very uneven. There's a lot of steps, an awful lot of steps, especially the gardens. It's like walled terrace gardens, so it's going down, you're going down lots of steps. So it's a little bit dangerous really, because the walls just come off like that. There's no fencing at the end of them, so if you've got a small child who just likes to run when it sees grass and run, it could easily just go over the edge. I mean, I'm a panicker. Everyone says I'm a panicker, but I am aware of these sort of things, so it's something to think about. There's not really any picnic places as such. Part of the terrace at the top has got areas where you can sit on the grass and probably have a picnic, but it doesn't boast a lot of picnic tables or anything like that. You're probably best taking a picnic blanket, although on their website they discourage carrying big bags and things in, but so I don't know. But I did see people with some, and I did see some picnicking. But it hasn't got an awful lot of gardens, like some stately homes and all. They've got huge amounts of grounds that you can walk around for hours. But this didn't have an awful lot. So one thing, yeah, to bear in mind, if you are close enough and you're able to visit, it's not very good for disabled people. It's not physically disabled. If you can't walk very well, because it is all steps, and to be careful with smaller children. But other than that, it's fascinating. But you're going to see now. Anyway, I'll stop talking now. I'm going to set it to a little bit of music so you can just look round. The quality isn't brilliant, like I say, the lights were coming at me quite a lot, but you can still see, get an idea of what it looks like. And from there, I shall say goodbye at the end of the video, on the video, so I shan't come back in person. And I will see you on Tuesday for another homeschool vlog. So have a good weekend, everybody, and take care. Bye.